Okay.
Did you get my good side?
You only have good sides. All right. Have you ever made an important decision based on fear? Fear of what might happen, what might not happen, what others might think. As parents, unfortunately, we have many opportunities to make our parenting decisions based on our fears. The problem is this very rarely leads us to what is ultimately best for our children and our families. So I want to tell you about some times that I've made some fear-based parenting decisions. A while back, it was our routine to have our 5 children play in the front yard as I prepared dinner. This was great. It was great for them. It was great for me. I could look out the window. I could hear them. I could see them. It was a good plan. My neighbors, however, did not like this plan, and they called the police. They called the police a lot. And so the police would come to our home, and they would talk about how we needed to install security fences, and we needed to put alarms on the doors, and we needed to get GPS ID bracelets for our children so they couldn't escape. But the thing that the officer and the neighbors didn't understand was that our children weren't escaping. This was a decision that we were making because I felt like it was a good idea for our kids to play outside a little bit each day. In the end, we stopped doing that. The children stopped playing outside while I prepared dinner because even though I thought it was best for them, my fear about that ever-growing rap sheet that I was developing outweighed. The idea that the children can ultimately be taken from me outweighed what I felt as a parent was best for my kids. So my fear was stronger than what I felt was best. There's only so many times the police can come to your home before steps are taken, and we didn't want any of those steps. How about this one? Have you ever been confronted with a toddler tantrum in the middle of the grocery store? I have way more than I would like to recall. So one particular toddler tantrum, we have the 5 children, my oldest offered to take the youngest 2, who were just losing it, out to the car. Gratefully, I handed him the keys, told him to turn on the air and lock the doors, totally safe. The rest of us finished bagging up the groceries. Within a few minutes, we were back out to greet our family. And instead, we're greeted by an enraged stranger, super mad, screaming at me about what a horrible person I was, what a horrible parent I was, how these children should be taken from me. When I tried to explain that he was 14 and legally able to care for his siblings, she wasn't interested. She just went on and on about what a bad person I was, and she too called the police. So now, when I'm in the grocery store and my children are having a hard time, instead of being able to consider and focus on what is best for them, so I'm thinking, you know, forget the groceries, I don't care about the melting ice cream, we're going home, or they're screaming, but we're just going to get through this because I can't do this again tomorrow, whatever it is. Instead of thinking about what's best for our family, I'm thinking about all those strangers and what they're going to think or say or do, or who they're going to call. So that leads me to what I call grocery store parenting. And this can happen anywhere. It happens a lot in the grocery store for some reason, but it can be the PTA meeting, soccer practice, church, anywhere that you are parenting publicly and somebody else wants to tell you about your child. So maybe it's friends, neighbors, strangers, your own parents, whatever. That toddler tantrum, maybe a well-meaning grandmother type says to me, oh, that child is tired. He needs a nap. You need to get him home to a nap. Well, I mean, obviously. Do you see I'm sweating? This is why I'm hurrying. Obviously, I want him in bed. I want to be in bed too. So, you know, not especially helpful. She's trying to be helpful, but it's not really helpful. Or maybe a grocery store employee would say, how about a cookie or a sucker? And sometimes that helps, and sometimes it really does not help. And maybe an onlooker is saying, well, not sugar. He shouldn't be eating sugar at this time of the day, or his age, or whatever the case may be. And then others who are now lining up because you're stalling the whole grocery store system, may be thinking and not necessarily vocalizing, that woman just does not know how to discipline her child. So in that stressful, overwhelming moment of parenthood, instead of feeling supported, I end up feeling judged, criticized, and ultimately afraid about what they think, instead of focused on what's best for my family. And everybody wants to tell us what's best. And as parents, of course we're trying to do what's best. Of course we want to do the right thing for our children. So we imagine that other people, all these people who have things to say, that they're experts and that we're incompetent. And we become overwhelmed by all the expert information and everybody's opinions. But the thing is, when it comes to parenting, there is no right. Now obviously there are some universal wrongs, so I'm not talking about abuse and neglect, but aside from those kinds of things, there's a lot of different approaches to parenting that can be successful. Many different roads will lead us to effective outcomes for our children. Our parenting approaches should be as diverse as we are as parents, and even more so, should be individually tailored to the children that we're parenting. I cannot parent this child the same way that I parent this child. It doesn't work. And if I'm only concerned about the right way and what the experts have to say, then I'm not leaving a lot of room for myself as a mother to listen to their cues, to their individuals' temperaments and personalities. So how do we decide as parents what's best, what's right? How do we choose? With so much information and so many experts out there. So I invite you today to consider where you're headed as a parent. And I want you to determine for yourself 3 main objectives as a parent. Your 3 are going to be different than my 3. That's not the point. The point is to be intentional and focused. As you determine your objectives, your focus, your purpose as a parent, it becomes a measure by which you can judge all other decisions that you have to make and all that expert advice. So I'll share my 3 so that I can illustrate my point. As a mother, I think there are thousands of things that I want for my kids. I want them to graduate from high school, I want them to have healthy relationships, I want them to be contributing members of society, all that. But in terms of my jobs, what my responsibilities are, my first and foremost role is to help my children understand that they're loved, that no matter what they do, they are lovable. From there, I need my kids to know that God is real. The faith and focus and purpose that knowing about my Savior has brought to me obliges me to teach my children those things. And so my second objective as a parent becomes helping them to discover those things for themselves. And finally, I need for my kids to know that there's help when they need it, because the truth is, I am going to make mistakes. As a parent, I'm going to mess up. I have messed up. And as humans, as children, they're going to make mistakes too. And what I need them to know is that that's allowed, and it's okay, and it's safe, and that when you find yourself in that place where you're alone and you can't do it alone, you don't have to. So these are my objectives. And I'll tell you about some times that I've made very specific decisions based on those objectives. So this first I call, we don't live that life, or why we don't do sports and how I became okay with it. So I fancy myself the quintessential soccer mom. Minivan, carrot sticks, songs, everybody's happy, shiny happy people, getting along, playing sports, going from activity to activity, everybody enriched and developing and fulfilled. But the thing is, we don't live that life. It's not like that. It's chaos. The van is filthy. We're eating French fries. It's just not like that. And so my kids are constantly coming home with these flyers from school, you know, like, can I do the science club? And how about chess club or soccer practice or whatever it is? They're always wanting to sign up for things, and I want that for them. And I imagined that for them. But my answer has always been, we don't live that life. So our resources are limited. Whether it's time or money or transportation, whatever it is, that just hasn't been how it's worked out. And for a long time, I felt terrible as a parent. I allowed guilt and shame to sort of interfere with all of that process, as I thought, I'm interfering with their ability to develop as healthy children, and just really got caught up in my weaknesses and shortcomings and my limitations and how that was limiting them. But as I remembered that I had already decided what was most important to me as a parent, I was able to measure, is this soccer practice, this soccer team really essential for helping my child to understand that they're loved? The answer is no. Is it really critical for them knowing that God is real? No, it's not. And so as I began to be able to sort of dismiss and move on, not only did it alleviate my guilt, but what it did is help me to cultivate a culture within our family where we're grateful for what we do have. And we're aware of the resources and the opportunities that are available to us. I couldn't have come to that conclusion and made that shift in my parenting if I didn't have those measures, if I hadn't decided in advance what was most important to me. So here's one of those we don't live that life moments. Our oldest son came to us last spring, he's 14, with an application to go to Japan. Okay, so my natural response was, we don't live that life. We just don't. There's no way we can afford to send you to Japan. But as I looked to my measures, I really focused on that third one, there is help when you need it. And I said, okay, go ahead and apply, assuming that he wouldn't get in, right? The very next day I get a call, this is exactly the kind of kid we're hoping will sign up for this program. And I'm like, are you going to pay for it? And I didn't know what we were going to do. But my son committed to working hard, and there were fundraisers, and we all rallied behind him, and we all committed, and we all worked really hard, and we earned a lot of money. And 2 weeks shy of that final payment, we didn't have enough. We didn't, after all that hard work. So we determined that we were going to do a fundraiser, and we were going to look to family and friends. And again, as a parent, we don't live that life. We do not ask people to pay for us to take trips to Japan. But I had those measures, and I realized that this wasn't about me or what I could or could not provide for my son. My children are going to have experiences in this life that have nothing to do with me, and they should. And without those measures, I absolutely would have stood in the way of this opportunity. But because I had a focus, because I had determined what was most important to me, my son went to Japan. He thrived. And our whole family had a beautiful experience because I was able to get out of the way. So when you determine to be an intentional parent, you decide on 3 measures by which you'll weigh all of your decisions. You'll determine what is most important to you. So you might be thinking, this is really simplified, like parenting is a lot more complicated than just 3 things. Sure. And you might be thinking, but there actually are experts. There's research, there's evidence, there's things to tell us what we should and shouldn't be doing. And to that I say absolutely, and embrace it and look to it. But without an internal guide, without a focus, it's very easy to become lost and confused and weighed down by those things. In addition, the experts can sometimes conflict, and certainly they can change. Let's look to safe sleep, for example. Now, I'm not starting a safe sleep debate, and I'm definitely not telling you not to listen to your pediatricians. But right now, the current standard for safe sleep is ABC. Alone, on their backs, and without covers. That's the safe sleep standard. Not that long ago, pediatricians were telling parents that they needed to have their infants sleep on their tummies. And somewhere in between these 2 expert opinions was a strange time when we were told that the only way that an infant could make it to morning was if they slept on their side. The thing is, babies don't actually stay on their sides. So parents were encouraged to purchase a device so that their child could wake up safely in the morning. I think that's absurd. For centuries, babies have slept without that thing. This expert thing, right? This expert thing is now obsolete. That opinion has changed. So over time, the expert evidence has changed and can sometimes conflict. Again, I'm not encouraging you to not listen to your pediatrician. I learned this concept very personally during the birth of my 3rd child. It was ideal. It was everything I had hoped it would be. I was able to deliver naturally. I labored mostly at home. We arrived at the hospital just in time. It was perfection. But unfortunately for the doctor and the nurses, they hadn't been able to monitor me or my baby. So they determined that just as a precaution, they would, the medical term at the time was called aggressively suction, just to make sure that there was no fluid or meconium or anything in her lungs or in her stomach. Now, as a parent, I'm thinking, that doesn't sound like a good idea. But he's the expert, right? He's the doctor. Of course I'm gonna, if he says it's best, then it must be best. And I know that he was trying to do what he felt was best in that moment, certainly. The thing was, it was a terrible decision. We spent 6 agonizing weeks trying to teach my daughter how to breastfeed. I was grateful that I had 2 prior experiences and I knew it was worth the fight, but it was scary and it was devastating. Now, believing what I do about looking for help when you need it, I was looking to every expert I could get my hands on. The Leche League, I had the lactation consultants from the hospital on my side and the pediatrician's office and coming to my home even. And what I kept saying was, I feel like she's kind of traumatized. Like she had a bad experience and she's got a bad association. She's stressed. She seems to be shutting down from stress every time it's time to eat. And they were saying, no, breastfeeding is comforting. It's their instinct. It's natural for them to do that. And so that couldn't be it. So this is just sleepy baby syndrome and you need to undress her and tickle her feet and get her wet and just kind of arouse her. Well, the more we did that, the more she shut down. It's like I could just watch her eyes become vacant. And it was quite scary. Ultimately, we worked through that. We were able to teach her how to properly feed, and we were able to move on with a very successful and happy breastfeeding experience, and I'm grateful. But 2 months after that traumatic experience, evidence, scientific proof came out to say that aggressive suctioning does in fact lead to the exact behaviors with which we were contending. So proof of what I already knew as a mother. I didn't need the evidence. I already knew. So I'm not saying don't look to the experts. I'm not saying don't research how to make good decisions as a parent. But you decide the focus. When it comes to your child, you are the expert. So determine what is most important to you. Choose your 3 things and become an intentional parent. Thank you.